The era of Scott Robertson as All Blacks coach has begun, folks. There's a lot of excitement down here in this part of the world about what he can do with the All Blacks. I've talked about his coaching record previously in Super Rugby and with Canterbury and New Zealand under 20s. To put a long story short, his coaching record is phenomenal. He's had pretty much unprecedented success with whatever team he has coached here in NZ, and now he's in coach of the All Blacks. So expectations for this guy are very high. Whether he lives up to them or not is kind of one of those things which remains to be seen. Time will be the true test, but we'll go through his initial kind of press conference. What were some of the kind of key takeaways from that with regards to the attitude, the alignment with the Super Rugby teams? There's also a bit of a Japanese connection there. He talked a bit about the Six Nations, selection policy and whatnot. And yeah, you guys can let us know your thoughts. But certainly he's gotten to work quickly because he's only been in the job, I think, a week or so. Because basically from 2024, he is the All Blacks head coach. He's already been having a camp with the Rugby World Cup players who are still here in NZ. Some have obviously gone abroad, but he's been having one-on-ones. They've been doing medicals, mental health checks, and been doing some fitness work and setting personal bests and whatnot. So yeah, they've been monitoring the guys in the off-season. The All Blacks fitness or high-performance coach, whatever role they call that, fitness coach basically, has made sure everyone's spick and span over the New Zealand summer. So they're not taking anything lightly. Zoom calls with the guys who are based abroad. Very, very busy. Not wasting any time for sure. But also equally very light-hearted. And maybe this is partly the media giving him a little bit of a free pass because he is pretty much well-liked across New Zealand. And I get the feeling from the press conference, quite well-liked by the New Zealand journalists. He's getting a pretty easy run of things so far. Compared to when you heard sometimes press conferences with Ian Foster, it felt a bit kind of embattled, under pressure. You know, the journalists were trying to poke him with a stick, basically, to try and get some kind of grumpy answers out of him. Razor's very lighthearted and quite able to flip sometimes tricky questions on their head. They asked him if there's any positions he's concerned about. He says, no, there's positions he's excited about. He's answering the same question, basically saying that we've lost a bit of depth at lock, but he's excited to see who can come through and kind of puts their hands up. So he's definitely got a very positive mindset, very lighthearted in his answers to his questions. Kind of very jovial and jokey with the journos who seem to be really on board. So I feel like media-wise, which is often a link to with the fans, he's probably going to get a pretty easy ride compared to Fozzie, at least in the early days. If we start losing some matches, that will likely flip on its head. But for the moment, very lighthearted and a pretty easy press conference to navigate for the most part. There were a few kind of tough questions. They did ask him about Super Rugby because that's a little bit of a bugbear here at times in New Zealand, in that the Super Rugby teams are at the mercy of the All Blacks and New Zealand Rugby selectors, basically, in that All Blacks are often limited in the amount of games they can play in a row, limited in the amount of minutes they can play in a Super Rugby season because they need to be protected from overwork. It's a player welfare thing. But at times, it seems to be devaluing the competition which they are supposed to be promoting, right? They're saying, well, we can't play these guys every week in Super Rugby because we need to save them for the real games, which are the All Blacks games. They was asked about that in his press conference, and he basically just said it's going to be similar to what's been going on before, so that kind of policy is going to continue. But they're going to look to have alignment between the All Blacks coaching staff and the Super Rugby coaches, in that previously there has been a kind of blanket rule. All the All Blacks guys must not play, I forget how many games in a row, and they must not exceed a certain amount of minutes in a certain time frame. Now they're making it a lot more individualized. It's not going to be one rule for all players. There's going to be individual load management on the guys. So rather than a one-size-fits-all thing, it's going to be a lot more tailored. And they're trying to get the high performance out of these athletes, basically. And Razor basically said if he explains that to people, hopefully there's not going to be a backlash. So yeah, I still think it does take away a little bit from Super Rugby, but rugby players certainly put their bodies on the line a lot. So I can understand not wanting to try and squeeze every ounce out of them, but certainly it creates a problem for the marketers of Super Rugby. That is just kind of a fact. And likewise, they've actually maintained a bit of a connection with Japan, because of all the guys who went to the World Cup, only 20 odd are back in NZ. There's a bunch of them who are in Japan currently who will be coming back likely for All Blacks selection. So they are keeping in touch with the guys based in Japan, and they will be going to meet with the players there in Japan. So potentially kind of taking a leaf out of South Africa's book, where South Africa under Rassie, they had these alignment camps. Sometimes the guys in South Africa would meet together from all their kind of different club teams, but also they would have guys traveling to Japan or to the Northern Hemisphere with the guys who are based in the clubs there to make sure kind of everyone is on the same page. So it seems like that's going to be an important step, that they give feedback to the guys who are based in Japan as well to make sure they get the most out of them. Now, one of the more interesting points about Razor's press conference was also about selection. And it's a pretty left field one as far as I'm aware, but I mean, other coaches have kind of done it before. But selection by committee. Razor basically said that the selection of the All Black side will be a team effort. So he's not going to be the decider to select the entire team himself. He's got a bunch of coaches with him and his assistants. They are going to have input and they're going to have ownership, as he put it. So Leon McDonald, who is the attack coach, is going to be selecting the back three. Jason Holland, who's the backs coach, is going to be selecting the midfield. Scott Hansen, who's the defence coach, will be selecting 9 and 10. Razor himself will be selecting the loose forwards, and then Jason Ryan, who's the forwards coach, will be selecting the tight 5. So selection by committee. Although Razor did say he's going to oversee everything, but from what he said, it doesn't sound like he's going to overrule these guys. So the guys that they get to keep an eye on, each guy has their own focus area, gets to pick the relevant player. It's different. I mean, it's been done before. I remember Warren Gatland talking about at the last Lions tour how they basically each came up with their own 23 and then kind of came to some compromise, which sometimes just seems to be the wrong way to do it, because I feel like by compromising, sometimes you get a kind of bland option rather than like what you were going for with your team selection. Like if you want to play a certain way, you pick a certain team, but if you just want to be okay at everything, you get a selection by committee. So whether that works, I mean, it's different, and then everyone has their own specific area to look after. So it's not just everyone picks their own 23, but it is certainly a bit left field. And then Wayne Smith's going to have some impact in there as well. So there's a lot of, what are those sayings about cooks in the broth? There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. But yeah, certainly left field. We'll see if it pays off. And then overseas players, he was also asked about whether there's any wiggle room for selecting guys like Richie Mo'unga, who is based overseas. Razor said he's only asked New Zealand Rugby and all the stakeholders there basically keep an open mind about it. So he's not asked for anything directly just yet. He wants them to keep an eye on where the game is going and that it's moving quickly, and to keep an open mind. And he also said he would like to select the best players. So kind of take into that what you will. Captain as yet undecided, but that's one for them to work on. He hasn't yet spoken to Ian Foster. That was maybe the least positive question he was asked. I get the feeling those guys really don't get along. But he said there is going to be some kind of handover at some point. But yeah, of all the questions Razor answered, that felt like the most kind of low-key one, the least positive. So yeah, Razor's going to work with the players over the next few weeks, and then he's heading up to the Northern Hemisphere to do some kind of corporate duties. He's got to meet all the sponsors, and while he's there, he's also going to attend England against Ireland in the Six Nations, with England on the All Blacks horizon. That kind of makes sense that he's keeping an eye on them. But yes, he certainly seems to be a busy fella. As I said, certainly very positive, which is going to make a change, because he's very different personality type from what we've had in the past with Fozzie and Hansen and even Graham Henry to a degree. They could all be a little bit grumpy old man at times, but I don't feel like we're going to get that from Razor. We'll see how he goes. As I said, the expectations are pretty much sky high, but he's getting down to business, so see how things go. You guys let us know your thoughts. Do you reckon Razor is going to be the answer to all of New Zealand's rugby woes, or do you think he's got a big job on his hands? You guys take care, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.